everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making some cards using the Simon Says Stamp August 2018 card kit. And I'm a little bit late, but I thought I'd go ahead and at least create a few so that I can share them. For card 1, I am using my favorite pattern paper from the kit and some Hero Art dies to die cut a piece out of the center, and then I'm taking a slightly larger die than the inside one that's on top of the pattern paper, and I'm going to die cut a piece of craft cardstock once I figure out where what needs to go. And once I have everything die cut, I take the little sticky tape off that was holding the dies in place, and I can start creating my card. I took some vintage photo distress oxide and I inked up the edges, but honestly I could have totally skipped this step because you hardly see that craft cardstock when I set the papers I want on top. So then I take a tape runner and I'm ready to start assembling. I take the frame of that pattern paper and I adhere that to the card base. And then I can work on that cardstock, that craft cardstock. I'm taking some double-sided adhesive tape and I'm adding that to the craft cardstock. And I really hate this brand. It's really difficult to take off the backing. I just don't like it. I'll be glad when I'm done with it and I can purchase something a little more friendlier. I layer up the craft cardstock and then the final piece of pattern paper I pop up on some fun foam, and then I can adhere that to the top of the card. Then I take a piece of vellum, and the vellum that I like to use is the Hero Arts, and I believe it's a 40-pound weight vellum. It's pretty thick stuff. And then the image I'm using is from the main stamp kit or stamp set, and which I've colored and die cut off screen to save a little time. And then I'm going to pop the image up using some bits of fun foam, and I'm trying to line it up onto that piece of vellum so I know where I need to stamp my sentiment. So once the main image is adhered to the vellum, I can work on the sentiment. And the sentiment that I end up using is "For You," and I'm lining it up so that it just fits right on that vellum. I treat the vellum with an anti-static bag so that I can stamp it with Versamark, and I can use some black embossing powder to set the sentiment. Once I've heated the sentiment, I'm ready to adhere it to my card panel. And one of the big reasons why I love this vellum is you cannot see the adhesive on the back of it. I've never seen it. I've never had a problem. So I just use the multi-medium matte adhesive and I adhere the panel down to my card. For the second card, I wanted to create a one-layer card, and I really wanted to focus on the sentiment, so I didn't want too much going on because I wanted the sentiment to stand out. So what I did was I took a piece of watercolor cardstock and I stamped out the fence, and then I created some masks to cover the fence, and now I can start creating the background. I'm doing a little bit of ink blending with Mermaid Lagoon for my sky, which happens to be my favorite color for the sky. And then some peeled paint for the bottom half of the card, or a little less than half, to create the grass. Once I'm happy with the layer of colors I've added, I can go ahead and peel off the mask and start coloring my panel in. So I decided to use my Tombow markers, and I did not want to add any water, so I just used them as markers. And I colored in the fence panels relatively dark. As I was coloring in, I realized that when I added the dark shade, I had like smidgens of seconds where the marker would, or what's on the paper would stay wet, so that I can use a lighter color to blend it out. And so after like the third panel, I realized I should just work one panel at a time to get the best blend. I guess after the fourth panel, I realized it's best just to color one panel in at a time. So once the fence was finished, I took a light green marker and I drew in some grass in the forefront. It's nothing fancy, they're just squiggly little lines that I colored in. And then I'll take a darker green marker and I do the same, a little bit less with the darker green, just to give the picture some dimension. I felt that the images in the stamp set, the flower images, were too big to stamp out, so I just used my Tombow markers to draw in some flowers, and I used 3 different shades of purple, and my mind was completely blown when I accidentally colored one of the flowers over the fence, and I realized that it didn't mix with the brown. It just looked much better to have some of the flowers as if they were in front of the fence. Once my panel was complete, there was a couple of spots where when I was ink blending, I didn't catch it all the way, and so there were some white spots along the fence, and I'm just taking a detailing tool and the Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink to add in a little bit in between those small tight spaces. And then I finally add my sentiment, and the sentiment I'm using for this card is With Love, and I just adore that font. and I treat the panel with an anti-static bag, and using Versafine ink I stamp out the sentiment, and then I can use some black embossing powder to set that. The day I was recording this video was one of those days. Nothing was adhering straight. Not a thing. And so the frame of the panel that I die cut earlier, I popped that up on some foam tape, and I want to inlay the panel. Of course, I managed to get that on crooked. And then I'm going to try this again. So I take that wonderful adhesive, and I add that to the back of my drawn panel. And painstakingly I remove the backing. I will be glad when this roll is done. And then I try yet again to adhere something straight, and nope, not going in. So this panel had to be forced into place a little bit. But there it is. There is the completed card. And I love it. It turned out so wonderful. For the third card, I used the cling stamp that was in the kit, and I stamped it out on a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock, and then I white heat embossed it. Now I'm taking Tattered Rose, and I'm doing a little bit of ink blending on that panel, and I really just wanted a soft, gentle background for this card. I'm just building layers of color until I'm happy with the result. I wanted somewhat of a distinction between the background and the embossed roses. So once I'm done, I had stamped the image and the sentiment onto a piece of vellum, and when I laid it on top of my panel, the white on white was sort of getting lost, and I didn't realize you can color in vellum. It just did not even occur to me, but you can, as it turns out. And so that's what I did. I took a Copic marker, and in between the lines where it's embossed, I just went gently over the vellum area. I was trying to be careful not to get the Copic marker onto the embossed area, but a little bit that I did get on there, I was able to just clean up with a colorless blender. So then to color the rose, I was not even going to try to color that face up. So I flipped it over, and it turns out you can color back there too. So I just kept adding color, and I was having a little bit of a trouble. I think I should have let the first layer dry before I added the second, but it's hardly noticeable that there was some blending issues. So I trimmed up the background panel to 4 by 5.5 because I just wanted the length of the card, full length of the card. I wanted a little bit of the sides to peek out. And then I took, for whatever reason, I took this glue, and I added it to the back of the image. And it worked fine. I didn't have any seepage through where it was noticeable. And then I just adhere that flat to my card base. And there's a close-up of card 3. For card 4, which happens to be my favorite card, I white heat embossed a watercolor panel using the Clink stamp. And then I took my Prima watercolors, and I'm going to do a little bit of watercoloring to create a rainbow background. I'm just following the rainbow order as I'm adding color, and before I add the next color, I wet the paper with my big brush. And there's really no rhyme or reason as to the pattern that I'm going. I'm just going. That green is so bright in real life, in person rather. It's such a beautiful color. I absolutely love this tone of shade of green. I add the blue. And then at the bottom of the panel, I can add my purple, which happens to be my favorite color, even though I had the smallest coverage. And that purple is stunning. It looks it in the video, and it is stunning in person. So then there's something to be said about leaving well enough alone, which no, I didn't. I didn't leave it alone. I thought I could intensify the color a little bit. They sort of felt slightly lost. And right there I make a mess. Somehow I added so much of the watercolor that my embossing got lost in those colors. It did not help to do that, and it certainly didn't help when it dried. But we just moved on past that. I let the panel dry, and then I took a stamp, or I took a couple of stamps from the stamp set, and I stamped out "Thank you for your kindness" onto a piece of black cardstock with some white embossing powder. And then I popped up the sentiment, and I dare not try to adhere this tiny piece without having an adhesive that gives me a little bit of wiggle room. So once the sentiment was dry, I trimmed it. I trimmed off the little bit that was hanging off, and then I thought to sort of salvage a little bit of that corner, I took the enamel stickers that were in the kit and I added a couple of the hearts here and there, and that completes this card. And there's a close-up of my last card that I made using the August 2018 Simon Says stamp card kit. Thank you guys so much for watching, commenting, and liking my videos. Thank you so much for subscribing as well. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Here is a couple of other videos that you may enjoy. Until next time, bye.